bombs away, a Yemeni tragedy. The desert night erupted in fire. It was 1:45 p.m. on March 15, 2025, in Yemen. US airstrikes ripped through the night sky. Their targets shrouded in the fog of war, claimed by the Pentagon as terrorist cells. But who were the true casualties? Innocent civilians caught in the crossfire? The answer, as always, remained elusive. These were not the first bombs to rain down on Yemen, a country ravaged by years of conflict and suffering. But these strikes were different. They were born from a chain of events so bizarre, so reckless, that they exposed the underbelly of American power in its most vulnerable and terrifying form. This was not just another military operation. This was an accidental war plan leak of unprecedented proportions. The Accidental Insider, a journalist in the war room. Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, never expected to be thrust into the heart of a clandestine military operation. But on that fateful day, his phone pinged with an unexpected notification. He had been added to a Signal group chat. The participants? A who's who of the Trump administration's national security apparatus. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Tulsi Gabbard.
At first I dismissed it as a mistake, a wrong number perhaps? But as I scrolled through the chat history, a chill ran down my spine. This was no ordinary group message. It was a window into the darkest corridors of American power, a live feed of classified intelligence and war plans. I had stumbled upon a national security nightmare.
Whispers of war-classified chats and internal dissent. In the shadowy corridors of power, where decisions of life and death are made, a storm was brewing. The Trump administration was grappling with internal conflicts that threatened to spill over into the public domain. The chat logs were a Pandora's box of secrets. They contained not just military strategies, but also the raw, unfiltered emotions and opinions of key players in the administration. These logs were a window into the soul of a government at war with itself. Hegseth, the hawkish defense secretary, reveled in the details. He was a man who thrived on conflict, seeing it as a necessary evil to maintain American dominance on the global stage. His enthusiasm for military action was palpable, almost infectious to those around him. He boasted about bombing timelines, spewed coordinates of targets, and dismissed concerns with a callous disregard for human life. To him, these were just numbers and coordinates, devoid of the human cost they represented.
The bombing timelines are set. Here are the coordinates. We need to act swiftly and decisively. We can't afford to hesitate. Every second we delay is a second our enemies gain the upper hand.
But not everyone in the group shared his enthusiasm. There were voices of dissent, whispers of caution that grew louder with each passing day. Vance, the pragmatic vice president, urged caution. He was a man who understood the weight of his decisions, the far-reaching consequences of military action. He questioned the strategic value of the strikes, arguing that they benefited Europe more than the United States. His arguments were grounded in a deep understanding of international politics and the delicate balance of power.
Are we sure this is the best move? It seems like Europe stands to gain more from this than we do. We need to think this through. Maybe we should delay the operation. A hasty decision now could lead to unforeseen consequences.
He even suggested delaying the operation, a suggestion that was met with scorn by Hegseth. The Defense Secretary saw any delay as a sign of weakness, a hesitation that could be exploited by their enemies. The chat revealed a deep rift within the Trump administration, a schism that threatened to undermine their efforts. It was a battle between hawks eager to flex American muscle and those wary of the consequences. This internal conflict was not just about strategy. It was about the very soul of American foreign policy. The hawks saw military might as the ultimate tool of diplomacy, while the doves feared the long-term repercussions of such actions. But amidst this internal power struggle, one crucial fact remained. Goldberg, an outsider, was privy to it all. He had access to the inner workings of the administration, a front-row seat to the unfolding drama. He was sitting on a journalistic goldmine, a story that could shake the foundations of American democracy. The question was, what would he do with this explosive information? The world was about to find out. Section 4, Real-Time Verification from Chat to Chaos.
As I read through the messages, my heart pounded in my chest. I knew I had stumbled upon something monumental, a story that could define my career. But I also knew the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about breaking news, it was about national security, about lives hanging in the balance.
He frantically contacted his sources, verifying the information, cross-checking the details, and then it happened. News broke of the airstrikes in Yemen, the timing, the targets, the weapons used. It all lined up perfectly with the information Hegseth had carelessly revealed in the chat. Goldberg was no longer just a journalist. He was a witness, a first-hand observer to a national security disaster unfolding in real time. The implications were staggering. Section 5, the fallout, political earthquake and legal aftershocks.
The news of the leak sent shockwaves through Washington. It was as if a political earthquake had struck the heart of the nation's capital, shaking the very foundations of trust and governance. The corridors of power buzzed with urgent conversations, and the media was ablaze with speculation and analysis. Democrats were outraged, accusing the Trump administration of reckless disregard for national security and demanding a full investigation. The calls for accountability grew louder with each passing hour, as Democratic leaders held press conferences and rallies to voice their concerns. Republicans, caught off guard, scrambled to contain the damage. They convened emergency meetings, trying to formulate a unified response to the growing crisis. The party was divided, with some members seeking to downplay the incident, while others acknowledged the gravity of the situation. Some downplayed the incident as an honest mistake, a minor lapse in judgment that had been blown out of proportion by the media and political opponents. They argued that the leak was not intentional, and that the administration had acted in good faith, while others expressed concern over the handling of classified information. They warned that such negligence could have serious implications for national security and the safety of American personnel and allies around the world.
The political fallout was immediate and severe. The administration faced a barrage of questions from the press, and the public's trust in the government's ability to safeguard sensitive information was severely undermined. Hillary Clinton expressed disbelief, tweeting, "This is not how a responsible government behaves." Her words resonated with many who felt that the administration's actions were a betrayal of the public trust. Senator Jack Reed, the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, called it a dangerous failure of operational security. He emphasized the need for stringent measures to prevent such breaches in the future. Senator Tammy Duckworth, an Iraq War veteran, blasted Hegseth's incompetence, highlighting the potential risks to military operations and personnel. Her military background lent weight to her criticisms, and she called for immediate corrective actions, while Senator Chris Coons claimed the participants had committed a crime. He argued that the leak constituted a clear violation of federal law and called for those responsible to be held accountable. The legal ramifications were just as serious. Legal experts weighed in, discussing the potential charges and the legal precedents that could come into play. The administration's legal team prepared for a protracted battle in the courts. The sharing of classified information, even through negligence, could be a violation of the Espionage Act, a federal law that carries heavy penalties. The act is designed to protect national security by imposing strict controls on the handling of sensitive information. The Justice Department launched an investigation, and the specter of criminal charges loomed over the Trump administration. The investigation promised to be thorough and far-reaching, with potential implications for the highest levels of government. Section 6, Hegseth's hot seat, denial and deflection. But Hegseth's denials rang hollow. The evidence was clear, the chat logs damning. The public and media were quick to scrutinize every word, every gesture. The chat logs, which had been leaked to the press, painted a picture of a man who was deeply involved in the very activities he was now vehemently denying. The logs showed conversations that were not only incriminating, but also suggested a level of carelessness that was shocking for someone in his position. His attempts to shift blame and discredit Goldberg only served to further erode public trust in his judgment and integrity. The more he spoke, the more the public's confidence waned. His defensive posture and aggressive tactics were seen as desperate moves by a man cornered. The crowd of protesters outside the press conference grew larger and more vocal, a clear sign that the public was not buying his narrative. The man entrusted with the nation's security had become a liability, a walking security risk. His stress was palpable, and it was clear that the weight of the situation was taking its toll. The security breach warning on the computer screen was a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. It wasn't just his career on the line. National security was at stake. His days in the Trump administration, it seemed, were numbered. The administration, already plagued by numerous scandals, could ill afford another. Hegseth's departure seemed imminent, and the corridors of power buzzed with speculation about his replacement. The once powerful figure was now a pariah, his influence waning with each passing day. At the center of the storm stood Pete Hegseth, the architect of this unprecedented security breach. His concerned expression at the press conference spoke volumes. The headlines screamed of betrayal and incompetence, and Hegseth was the face of it all. The media frenzy was relentless, and every new piece of information only added fuel to the fire. Faced with mounting pressure and accusations, Hegseth resorted to a familiar playbook: denial and deflection. He dodged questions, deflected blame, and tried to paint himself as the victim of a smear campaign. But the reporters were relentless, their questions piercing through his defenses. Each deflection only seemed to confirm his guilt in the eyes of the public. He denied sharing war plans, claiming that his messages had been taken out of context. He insisted that the documents on the table were not what they seemed, that they had been manipulated to paint him in a bad light. But the evidence was overwhelming, and his denials only served to deepen the public's suspicion. He accused Goldberg of being a liar and a partisan hack, intent on damaging the Trump administration. The heated argument at the press conference was a spectacle, with Hegseth's accusations flying fast and furious. But Goldberg's reputation was solid, and the public was more inclined to believe him over Hegseth. He even went so far as to suggest that Goldberg had fabricated the entire story. This bold claim was met with skepticism from the audience, who'd grown weary of Hegseth's tactics. The more he tried to deflect, the more the public saw through his charade. In the end, his attempts at denial and deflection only served to seal his fate.